are still going into the tanning beds even with this 10% surcharge. Is that a safe assumption?
That's what our data and projections show, sir, yes.
And when you were making your revenue calculations, did you take into consideration at all the latest Centers for Disease Control figures that they released, which shows that the indoor tanning is used by 7% of all high school students, 11% of high school girls, 16% of girls in the 12th grade, and 15% of all white high school girls? Did that go into your calculation at all?
The distribution of users does not go into the calculation. What's important for the calculation for us is what price is charged for the use, regardless of who uses it. If there's discount pricing for high school students compared to someone my age, then that would be reflected in some of the receipts data that we look at. So it would account for that. But
and if I heard you correctly, based on your previous testimony before us, that you don't take into consideration, again, figures from the Centers for Disease Control that shows that tanning beds used before the age of 30 has been found to increase your risk of developing melanoma by 75%. You don't take that into consideration at all when calculating?
To the extent that use of tanning beds is recognized by potential consumers as potentially harmful, and so they choose not to use them at all or as often as they were, is part of our baseline projection. Our baseline projection is what is the projection of use. So, for example, in another area that we've done a lot of work for the committee, tobacco taxes, our projections are based off declining rates of smoking, and so to the extent that the information that you're describing to the committee is known and affects people's decisions, we do account for that. In answer to Mr. Levin's question, which was there may be, in fact there are costs of course associated with skin cancer, we do not, in this estimate is about the receipts from this tax, about tax receipts. It's not about outlays that may be the result of a skin cancer that was induced by use of tanning beds.
Now, based on your response to Mr. Levin, if I understood you correctly, it was because that cost would fall outside the 10-year budget.
Well, I was suggesting that in terms of looking at this particular proposal, because this particular proposal says we have this tax on tanning surfaces now, it would repeal it. And so you might think, oh, people might choose to tan more. Well, they would choose to tan more after the beginning of 2018. And I said, since skin cancer is generally long determining, that the incremental incidence of skin cancer, and I will admit I'm getting away from my knowledge base, not a physician.
We appreciate that.
But knowing that it's longer term, that I would have intuitively thought those costs might, for the most part, fall outside.
Well, let me just ask you this final.
I was not trying to say that these were unimportant considerations.
Let me ask you a final question, since my time's about to expire. But is the $600 million revenue loss that's called for under this subtitle, is it offset in any way with any increase in revenue that we may get from with the increase of businesses that dermatologists are going to realize throughout the country because of the policy implications of repealing this tanning tax?
Well, actually, in a very general way, any analysis that we do of excise taxes reflects the facts that excise taxes change prices that consumers pay, and so that as you increase them or decrease them, you decrease or increase the amount of funds that they may have to spend on elsewhere in the economy, and that leads to increases or decreases in profits elsewhere in the economy. And so there is what economists jargon refer to as a general equilibrium analysis that goes into this.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Doggett.